Welcome to Leaders Unfiltered. Here we have conversations with people making big moves in life, but we get to know them for who they really are, behind that fancy title and pretty face. My hope is that these conversations not only inspire, but that they help you to make better decisions in life, get clarity on your calling, and ultimately live life to the fullest. Today's guest is a man you'll find at Saunders or at Okia enjoying a great cup of coffee. He loves sport and he's been to a few incredible sporting events. But besides that, he's got a very important job and a very big title as head of operations of SA Rugby. Ladies and gentlemen, Yusuf Jackson. Yusi, welcome.
Thank you very much, Rudolph, and it's a privilege being on your show.
How are you doing? What's up? What's happening? What's keeping you busy? We'd like to know where you're at and what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Rudolph. At this point in time, officially, SA Rugby's offices opened up, 9 days ago. So from an administration perspective, SA Rugby HQ, as your viewers might know it, is getting into the swing of things for the rugby calendar year of 2025. However, at the same time, rugby is now a 12-month sport. We've got our franchises that participated over the festive season in the URC, in the EPCR. And following this past weekend, 3 of those 5 franchises have progressed to the Challenge Cup. So we've got the Bulls, we've got the Sharks, we've got the Lions that will all be contesting in the first weekend of April in the Challenge Cup. But in saying that, our competition still continues. We've got our SA Rugby Women's Premier Division that is kicking off this weekend. Why that's important is that this year is Rugby World Cup 2025, and as excited as we were in 2023 when our Springboks travelled to Paris and successfully defended their crown in France, we are really hoping that our Springbok women put on a very good performance in England, where they participate in Rugby World Cup. So that is some of our immediate competition tournaments and events that's lined up in what will be quite an action-packed 2025.
You are clearly in the swing of things because that is a lot that's happening. But talking about swing of things, have you had a few swings this holiday? I've seen you on a few golf courses throughout December. How's that been?
Well, in my off time, for a lack of a better phrase, I try and work on my handicap.
Okay.
Because being afforded the opportunity sometimes to get invited to golf and then others joining mates and friends and playing golf, many people always question my handicap. And I don't know why, because it just takes a couple of rounds for the truth of the handicap to reveal itself. But I do love a round of golf. I always believe that golf just takes you out of the office. It takes you out of your comfort zone. It's you playing against yourself. And if I may indulge you and your viewers, I was introduced to golf many years ago by the head of SA Rugby referees, Andre Watson, who basically said, listen, after seeing he came to me on the golf course while I was struggling. I do still struggle now. But he came to me and he mentioned, it's okay to play a bad shot. It's like refereeing. No referee's 100%. They're going to make, or they're going to miss a call, but it's about how you recover and it's about how you respond. And that was a great life lesson at that particular time. And I still try and incorporate that in my golf of today and then again in life, just to make sure that you enjoy the fun of it. So yes, during the December holidays, I definitely had a few rounds of golf, and it was a lot of fun.
That's great. That's great. You see, I love how you're really jumping into the analogies between leadership and golf, and you've got this podcast title sorted. But before we jump into everything SA Rugby and leadership, tell me a bit more about who you are. Yes, we know you're head of operations of SA Rugby, but if a random comes up to you on the street and asks you, Yusi, who are you? What would you respond?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. And a lot of the introductions was quite flattering. And
which one did you enjoy the most?
Well, I think when you mention about the looks, because I always say that if you can't be the part, try and look the part.
You're getting that right. You're
Yeah.
getting
So,
that right.
well, it's work in progress, but let's see how we get there. I think that most of I'm universally known as UC. My name is Yusuf. I am. I've been in sport for a long time. Before I joined SA Rugby, I used to be a rugby and cricket writer. I worked for the independent newspapers covering rugby and cricket. Covered the rugby, the Cricket World Cup when it was in South Africa in 2003, and I also played rugby at a very young age, young enough, or had the wisdom at that age to know. Listen, if you wanted to make it in rugby, you're going to have to do it off the field and rather on the field. So followed that pathway in terms of writing rugby and cricket. Then in 2009, it was the British and Irish Lions tour that was in South Africa. SA Rugby had the vacancy for a communication person to work behind the scenes at SA Rugby while the Lions tour was going on, to ensure that all the other competitions, tournaments, and events from SA Rugby is being communicated. I looked at that opportunity and I said, wow, it was a year contract back then. I was a lot younger and I would imagine more handsome back then. And probably didn't have the foresight maybe that what I had now, but took the decision, joined SA Rugby on a year contract, and worked behind the scenes while the Lions tour was going on, just being part and parcel of a federation, or rather a sporting code. Now, let's remember, rugby to some South Africans, it's a sport. To others, it's a way of life. To some, it's a religion. So being on the one side of the fence and then moving to the other side of the fence, that was eye-opening, and it immediately caught my passion in terms of, is this where I see myself for the next few years? Unfortunately, it is how life presented itself. Started at SA Rugby as media manager, and was media manager for 1.5 years. From there, the role evolved from being media manager into media manager of competitions and tournaments and events, to then joining all SA Rugby's national teams outside that of the Springboks. And that was one of the exciting periods in my career. Had the opportunity of getting to meet Springboks that are now double world champions, that entered into the rugby continuum as a 17-year-old and as an 18-year-old. And I was in that position for quite a number of years. And from there, as in most careers, I was fortunate enough to be afforded the opportunity of joining then SA Rugby's commercial division. SA Rugby's commercial division at the time had all the competitions, tournaments, and events structured within that division. Joined that, and from there, just continued that pathway, and now head of competitions, tournaments, and events, which encompasses part of the operations responsibility.
Amazing. And I actually wanted to ask you this a bit later on in our conversation, but after what you've shared, I think it's a good time to bring this in now. Many people listening to this are in their 20s and are figuring out their careers. And a question that I often hear is, when do I decide to move on into a new company, and what would make me stay at my current company? You've been at SARU for 15 years now, if I'm not mistaken, going on to 16. Why did you stay at SARU? What kept you at SA Rugby for so long?
I think the academic response is that it should be an easy response. But I think that if I may entertain your viewership by saying that if you if you look at what the code represents to the layman South African, it's one of the reasons why after 15 years, I still am at a federation where when you walk in the streets of Soweto, when you walk in the streets of Langa, when you walk in the streets of Mitchells Plain or in Durban or Bloemfontein, and those citizens of South Africa, when they see the Springboks, when they see Siya Kolisi, when they see Eben Etzebeth, when they see Andre Pollard, and their day gets lightened up. Throughout the 15 years, that's a reminder to myself, but this is where I want to be in. And this is the brand that I want to be associated with. Very few brands or opportunity, I think brands is for a lack of a better phrase, gives the nation that feeling that on a Saturday at 5 p.m., with all South Africa's worries and troubles and issues, at 5 o'clock, South Africa settles down. Everybody is captivated either at a stadium or in front of the TVs or at braais or in pubs or on beaches or wherever. And for 120 minutes, taking in halftime and all that into consideration, everybody is factored and invested in ensuring that the Springboks do well. And when the Springboks do well, the rest of we know what South Africa is like, be it after a final, be it after a semi-final, be it after any particular fixture. And we also know the converse effect when the Springboks don't do well. The world comes to an end for us as South Africans. But that is life as high performance sport. So throughout the 15 years, the thrills and the spills of that excitement is keeping me at SA Rugby. And long may that continue, hopefully.
We all hope so, definitely.
Thank you.
And I like what you mentioned about brand strength. And we're going to ask and tackle a few questions on brand strength. One of those will be the Springbok that you're wearing on your chest and what I'm wearing on my hat at the moment, which is something very new.
Yes.
But you've been, as mentioned, with SA Rugby for 15 years, and the brand strength has fluctuated. We've been in dark places.
Yes.
And we've been where we are now, on top of the world, back-to-back world champions. What has been, and I'm speaking about the Springboks specifically now, and not SA Rugby, but what has been the main reason for the growth and just let's say the growth of the Springboks in the past few years, past say 8 years? Has it been Rassie and Siya, or has it been something that we haven't seen behind the scenes that has led to this growth?
Rassie Rasmus has, I think on numerous occasions, mentioned, let the main thing remain the main thing. And I think that kind of can be interpreted in many ways. But in terms of let the main thing remain the main thing, brings us to the point that as long as a team is winning, if a team is winning, the public and supporters and spectators, they become more excited, they become more interested. The old saying of you're only as good as your last game. So what the Springboks got right when Rassie came back into the environment in 2018 is that he got the Springboks winning again. You will recall that in 2018 we had a 3-match test series against England, which we successfully won, and then we managed to get some good results in New Zealand, which is a destination that we've really struggled to get results at. And I think it's been well documented on some of the post-Rugby World Cup documentaries about the plan was always to win the Rugby World Cup in 2023 in terms of building a squad and building a team. And 2019 came, and 2019 was quite special. The birth of what has now matured and is still in the process of further maturing, because I would imagine a lot of the players will put up their hands and say, listen, they are ready to go on to 2027 as well. But a lot of them tasted that success in 2019, and it's that kind of success and it's that hunger that got them through COVID, after COVID, doing well in 23, and then last year, the amazing year that we had last year, doing relatively well against Ireland, New Zealand, and then at the end of year tour, we only lost two matches, and that in itself is at quite a satisfactory level compared to the performances that we've had in our history over an X amount of years. I think at the same time, we also need to remember, when we speak about the success or the sustainability of the success of the Springboks, is that as South Africans, we are privileged to be able to have such strong rugby structures in the country. We are the envy of the world in terms of our school structures, where certain countries are really looking at how to make rugby attractive and to have rugby as an aspirational sporting code. In certain countries, it's very easy for our youngsters at primary school to aspire to play in an under-13 Craven Week. When a rugby plays at high school, their only focus, besides wanting to play for the Springboks, is to play Craven Week, is to make SA schools, is to make junior Springboks. I think from an SA Rugby perspective, I think we got that right. And that comes from excellent leadership that was put down through, you mentioned Rassie, you mentioned Sia, I would add Yuri Roo, the former CEO of SA Rugby. I think that strong leadership in terms of ensuring that we don't negotiate those kind of structures played a massive part in ensuring that as there were dips, but that we could recover from those dips.
You touched on a few very important things. First of all, the importance of great leaders in any organization. Secondly, great structure. And this leads me to my next question on transformation and inclusivity. These are words that have always been thrown around within SA Rugby, within any sport, as a matter of fact. The Springboks have nailed this on the head, it seems to me. We don't count the amount of players of color in the team because we know it's the best players there. It's something that I've seen transform in the circles we move in. We back the leadership, we back the team, regardless of who's playing, what their color is. How did that change? Is it because of great leadership and great structures, or is there something else to it?
I think what's important to note, and I'll go back to our excellent structures, in terms of the pyramid, it's about ensuring that the base is solid. If the base is solid, it should be relatively easy to then work yourself up to the top. Now, if you look at, and I'm going to draw a comparison in terms of the 2019 Rugby World Cup celebrations by normal South Africans and 2023. In 2019, going into townships, you had people who I would imagine know the Springboks. People were shouting Bokke and Springboks and so forth. But in 2019, not necessarily knowing that's a Faf de Klerk, that's a Eben Etzebeth. They probably did, but it was association with a brand.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of transformation, we understand transformation is perceived as color.
Yeah.
But in terms of transforming the brand, what we saw in 2023, we saw those very same people on street pavements in townships crying, calling out to people within the brand, connecting with a Faf, connecting with a Handré, connecting with a Kirtley, with a Cheslin. And I'm not even mentioning your Sias and your Ebens and that. So now you've got people that, to be fair, my question that I asked myself, and it's a question that some of us on that particular tour were asking ourselves. Our job is not completed off the field. while the success on the field is now spoken for itself, there's the trophy that is going around five regions in the country. Do these people understand the sport in itself? If we ask them, listen, what is a line out, or what is a ruck, or what is offside, or that, do they know that? Potentially they don't. There's so many rules in rugby, even some of us that follow it struggle to be up to date with those kind of rules. So then our job is not done in terms of transforming the game, because it is about us taking the game to the people and trying to ensure that we further enhance our brand. I mentioned on a previous show that the Springboks are universally loved in South Africa, but feared abroad. So we've got a job to take the Springboks abroad, but we also have a responsibility to ensure that the Springboks, which essentially belongs to the people, is taken to the people. And I think the Springbok team over a number of years have made the brand exercise quite a lot easier, because they resonate to the people and the people resonate to the team. So when they look at a team, as you asked earlier, in terms of looking at demographics and dynamics and that, it becomes a non-issue then.
Very interesting. I never thought of it like that. So because of the brand's positioning and brand strength that relates to a wider audience of people, that automatically would make people want to be part of the brand more and therefore want to associate with it?
I'll use the example. So if I'm coming from a region of Cape Town, and there's no Cape Townian players that are selected in the Springbok team, I'm going to look at that 23 players that are selected every weekend to ask that question, where are the Cape Townians? And now, in 2025 or in 2024, we've got a squad of 23 players on any particular Saturday match day that resonates the country. So that kind of debate and discussions has quieted down to some extent, well, to a large extent, because as I mentioned, the team resonates with the people and the people feel associated with the team.
That's beautiful. Makes so much sense. And what's amazing for me is getting that right and then still putting the best players on the field. And, the rest is history, winning 2 World Cups.
The main thing should always remain the main thing. And when you say getting the best players on the field, it's about getting the best players on the field.
Yeah.
Again, we as SA Rugby, we do have a responsibility of growing the game. And we would like to grow the game even further to areas that has not been exposed to the game, as I previously alluded to. But we will get there. It is about ensuring that we take the game to make it accessible, but then also to take the brand so that every person, when they turn on their television or they check on social media and they see the leaping Springbok, they feel that warmth, they feel that that's who we are.
So you mentioned SA Rugby, and we know SA Rugby does not equal the Springboks, because there's so much more to SA Rugby. As you mentioned in your intro, it's the women's rugby team, it's the age group levels, it's all the different unions and sevens, etc., etc. Does success with the Springboks equal success at SA Rugby?
That is a very important question that you've asked, and if I may, that the Springboks within the SA Rugby stable, the Springboks is the tier 1 team in terms of, we've got a tier in terms of the ranking of our teams. Springboks sits on top and equal for Springboks. Then we've got the Springbok women, and then it's the Blitzbokke, and then it's the junior Springboks, and it's the SAA, and so we go down until we get down to the junior competitions. Now, commercially, an organization or a federation, to be able to sustain itself financially, needs to be commercially strong. And we are in a very fortunate position with the Springboks performing at a level at which they are performing that makes them commercially attractive and then commercially strong. And that then filters down. Without mincing words, a sponsor or partner would rather want to have his name associated on a Springbok short or a Springbok socks or a jersey than one of the lesser teams or the lesser known teams. But to be associated with that stable gives them the opportunity of wanting to be associated. Now, I'll go back a step. The opposite is also true. In the and heaven forbid, if the Springboks go through a dip and sponsorships are hard to come by because the brand is unattractive, team is not performing, the opposite happens. So we're in quite a healthy situation from where we are. The reality is that for the SA Rugby ecosystem to be successful, it is extremely important that the Springboks continuously be a successful global brand.
So there's clearly a link between the Springbok success and SA Rugby's success. And financially, it makes sense for the Springboks to win. So what is SA Rugby doing from a financial and commercial point of view to be sustainable, to keep growing, keep making more money? Because to me, it sounds like winning is everything. The main thing is winning. And if the Springboks are winning, financially it makes sense. It makes sense to build a brand, to bring people together. Is it that simple?
Well, I think if we look at what is part of SA Rugby's as a federation, what are some of the objectives? Is that one, to be commercially strong. It's important to be commercially strong because remember, SA Rugby is constituted by 14 members. 14 members are 14 provincial unions. So it is important for SA Rugby to be commercially strong. It is important for SA Rugby to have successful winning national teams, because successful winning national teams makes the whole commercial conversation and discussions a lot easier. It is important for SA Rugby to deliver world-class and successful events, because all these national teams participate. If you look at the Springboks, for argument's sake, they play up to about 6 internationals in South Africa annually. So not every Springbok match is local. There's one match a year that potentially goes to a Cape Town or a Durban or Bloemfontein. And it's ensuring that we deliver world-class products for our stakeholders, that they can resonate with that brand when the brand is in town. We are only as strong as our pipeline. One of SA Rugby's objectives is to ensure that participation and growth is important. We need to ensure that there's enough rugby players that's in our system and that will be in our system and that will be in our system for many years, to ensure that the next Sias and the next Handres and the next Mapimpis have been identified. So those are some of the key components that we've aligned with and that we constantly look at, to ensure that right on top, SA Rugby remains sustainable as a federation of rugby in South Africa.
Okay. You mentioned earlier the Springboks are becoming a way of life, more than just a rugby team. And the Springbok, the leaping Springbok on your chest and my cap, I think, is testament to that. Tell me a bit more about the partnership with Old School and the Springbok going off field, for a lack of a better term. And what's the vision with that?
I think that what we need to understand, that in the past, when the Old School brand was, when the Old School Springbok brand was launched, part of that messaging was, now it becomes 24/7. So previously, you'd find maybe yourself and me and many other avid rugby supporters and fans don the green and gold on a Bok Friday. And if not on a Bok Friday, on a match day. With the introduction of old school that is providing quite a lot of leisure wear, which includes the cap that you're wearing, the polo that I've got, the shorts that people can go to the beach with, it again resonates that association with a team, but at the same time with the lifestyle that you're currently engaged with. You can be at a picnic, or you can be with your friends and family, and you could have on a powder blue or a plain white polo that has got an association with the Springbok or with SA Rugby, but at the same time look at it from a leisure perspective. Our plan is obviously to grow the Springbok brand, and hopefully merchandising is one of the ways in which we most certainly are going to look at strengthening that growth.
And so far, it seems like it's been amazing. It excites me seeing people walk around with the Springbok on their chest. So I'm sure it's going to go from strength to strength.
It excites all of us. I think that after the launch, we were in the UK for the Springbok versus England game, and some of the products was on display, and the appetite that the expats had towards supporting this new range was absolutely insane. So that is exciting.
Amazing. You see, last rugby-related question, and then I've got another sport-related question that I'm really excited about. But we've moved from Super Rugby to the URC quite a few years back now. I think it's year 4 now? When was it, 2022?
We started off in pro rugby in 2019.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
2019 with Free State and the Kings.
Okay.
And the Southern Kings that participated in pro rugby, pro 14, pro 16. And again, through to, you mentioned earlier, leadership. Strong leaders, our leaders having the foresight to try and look for various avenues in a way in which our competitive advantage from a high performance perspective is not compromised. Let's not kid ourselves that one of the success elements of the Springboks is having our franchises participate in the best competitions. And the Vodacom United Rugby Challenge and the Investec Champions Cup and Challenge Cup, we've seen in year one with our 4 franchises that participated in that competition, a local final with the Stormers and the Bulls. We saw in year 2 the Stormers hosting back-to-back finals with Munster. In year 3 the Bulls hosting a final with Glasgow. So we are in year 4 of that iteration. And if you look at the top 8, we've got the Stormers, we've got the Sharks, and we've got the Bulls that are in the top 8. We've got the Stormers and the Lions that are all with a game in hand, that are challenging also to get into those playoff spots. I mentioned early in the program, 3 of our 5 franchises are in the Challenge Cup playoffs in any event. So it's ensuring that competitive advantage from a high performance perspective is not compromised, and that is one of the elements in which going up Europe makes a lot of sense. I think the other piece that needs to be remembered is that just from a brand perspective, you've got very favorable kickoff times for the consumer now, where you've got at 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock. If we're playing in France, 10 o'clock kickoffs. So from a brand perspective, you can become very strong there. Mates, friends can arrange barbecues, braais, functions, and you are spoiled for 3-4 matches that you can watch the South African teams participate either in South Africa or up in Europe, as compared to the unfavorable time zone previously which again was no fault of anyone, but the product has become, or the franchise product has become a lot more attractive since moving up north.
And would you say that's the main reason for the move?
Well, there's quite a lot of reasons that one can factor in, and we could be spending hours talking about that. I think one of the important points that we also should understand is that we've got also quite a lot of expats that are up north, specifically in London, and we see that when the Sharks played their semi-final fixture at the Stoop, over 15,000 people, and the majority of them being South African people. So I would imagine from a Sharks perspective, but also from an SA Rugby and rugby perspective, that's strong for the brand. If we look at viewership numbers, that's been well documented in terms of the successes of the URC and the EPCR. Those numbers are unprecedented in terms of what they were and what they are now at the moment. If we look at a South African brand as Investec that is sponsoring, example, the EPCR, means that there's value in terms of those brands as well from a global perspective. And then people that's much more qualified than me from a rugby perspective have said what advantages it gives our players to be week in, week out playing in those kind of conditions. Those kind of conditions where you get your boil overs, where there's massive results. But generally those results are quite conservative and are closely contested fixtures.
So you see, if I'm not mistaken, you are part of the committee to bring the Olympics to South Africa in 2036. Is that correct, first of all?
Not correct.
Not correct. Okay.
Yeah.
What is correct?
What is correct is that there's in the Western Cape, or there's quite a lot of aspiring but really dynamic leaders that have looked at the concept of the Olympics for 2036 to South Africa. There's a lot of engagement that is taking place from a municipality, local government, national, SASCOC level, and hopefully in the upcoming weeks there'll be some guidance in terms of what that path will look like. I've been humbled and fortunate enough to have been engaging with them just in terms of from an event delivery perspective, delivering rugby events in South Africa. These dynamic people are speaking to quite a lot of South Africans. And I've been fortunate that I've been one of those South Africans that has been engaged. But in saying that, the noise that is coming from those circles and the traction that it is receiving is quite great. People like former Olympian, Olympic gold medalist, Chad Leclos, endorsing it. There's been the Minister of Sport has also spoken publicly in terms of what an Olympics or bringing international events to South Africa would mean. So while we are at its infancy in that idea, it is something really, really exciting that we look forward to seeing unfold, and positively.
And will that mean that a specific city like Cape Town will host the Olympics?
So at this point in time, there's quite a lot of options that are on the table in terms of event destinations. And I say that if we look at the previous Olympics that was held in Paris, not all the events were held in Paris per se. Surfing was held in another country.
Yeah.
And then the football was held in Marseille, for argument's sake. So there's various models that's on the table, and ultimately, once a decision or a direction has been taken in terms of the Olympics and 36. I think a much more structured approach in terms of where it's going to be held and how it's going to be held will be disclosed.
That's so exciting. You see, I back you. Please make it happen.
Well,
That will be so cool.
Again, it would be amazing in our lifetime if an Olympics would be in South Africa. Or in Africa, but in South Africa.
In Cape Town.
I'm a Cape Townian in Cape Town. And again, I support those enthusiastic persons that are working amazingly behind the scenes to put presentations and documentation for the correct role players to have a look at and look at it favorably.
You see, I've seen you operate. As head of operations, you operate and you're often on the phone or sorting something out, and you've got your hands in various pies within SA Rugby. How do you go about making big decisions?
On a lighter note, and I think it's very relevant that I mention this, is during the holidays, you mentioned earlier about my love for golf. So I was walking. This was quite early in the morning. Walking to a golf course. I've got some crazy friends that sometimes calls tee off times at 8 in the morning and 7:30 in the morning, and arrived one morning at that particular time, only to bump into one of SA Rugby's Exco members, and. This particular Exco member was pleasantly surprised, as I was, to see her at the golf course, and she made a comment. I don't know how accurate that comment though is, but she's quite an intellectual and quite a clever person, saying that, is that how you remain grounded and unshaken when the need is there to make big decisions and big calls? And I looked at her and I was like, and why is that? And she says, it's because you play golf. So that is, on a lighter note, that could be one of the reasons. Maybe I should be playing more golf during my off time. But I think what's very important to note is that I try and surround myself with good people. I try and surround myself with honest people. I try and surround myself with experienced people. And when it comes to making decisions, consultation is crucial. Consultation is, one doesn't have to fear to consult. It doesn't make you a less of a person to be able to consult. It doesn't make you a less of a person to also say, I will get back to you. Give me a few minutes and so forth. So I believe I've got a strong base in terms of that consultation process, where if I'm ever in doubt, to consult, to be able to ensure that when a decision needs to be made, when work needs to be done, when action needs to be taken, one goes full on into that, knowing that there could be repercussions, there could be mistakes that could also come out of there. But there's this saying that I always address to my teams, where I say, where I basically tell them, there's no perfect people on this world, yet they've got perfect intentions. So I am of the opinion that if you've got a perfect intention, you do want to hit a golf ball, you do want to jump into an ocean, you do want to grab a cup of coffee, you do want to, for the matrics that just passed, you do want to get 80% or 90%. You want to get into university. Guess what? Sometimes you don't. But if you don't, it's then to ensure that your base, that you've got a strong, solid base that will consult and guide you to ensure that the right decisions are then made. And back to the ranch in terms of me and my professional career, it's to ensure that when things go sideways, and when there's the need to just press pause, to be able to take ownership, to be able to say, listen, yes, but then be honest in terms of admitting the status where one is, and then approaching any particular instance for what that instance demands.
I love that, because it takes a lot of humility to go to people and ask for help, and to admit when things are tough. So I love that, and I can see that in you, which is beautiful.
Thank you.
And just you see on that, you mentioned playing golf lightheartedly, and in the intro we made a joke about the cold dips and so on.
Yes.
But what are a few habits that are non-negotiables for you that could potentially help you to be in the frame of mind to make good decisions?
The cold plunges or the cold dips is one of them.
Yeah.
I try and ensure that, well, at least every Monday, and then in the middle of the week. And all of this is subject to one's schedule. But again, where possible, and I try and work my schedule around that. At the start of the week, middle of the week, end of the week, and that's work week. And then the weekend takes kind of care of itself. But to ensure that wake up in the morning, take a cold plunge. Between 5 and 10 minutes in the cold Atlantic waters of Saunders or Camps Bay Tidal Pool, and just to yourself in the cold water. Yesterday morning at the pool, there was a young lady that was there, and she got out. She got into the pool just after I got in, and she got out before I got out. And when I eventually got out, I asked her, "Did you enjoy that?" And she said, "No, my feet got numb." And my response to her was, "But that's the point, is that it's getting just through that phase of the numbness of the feet, and then trusting the system and trusting the process and finding yourself. And therein lies the method behind the madness of potentially going to jump. Others do a cold plunge for weight loss. As you can see, it's not working with me. But clearly, for me, it's about just going into my zone in the morning, getting that rush, and then starting a day. Well, starting a week, starting a day, starting a month, starting a project, and that's how my day starts. It starts there. Immediately after that, one needs to then warm up, and then a coffee soon follows. And there's a couple of local coffee outlets on the Atlantic seaboard that serves a very good Americano. Decaf Americano, I might add. I get a lot of flack for that. But that's how my day starts. It starts then, and head over to work, spend the day in the office. At the end of the day's office, depending on how the program and the schedule is, head back to my place. Try and spend some time by myself, just trying to recollect the day. Try and maybe the wrong word is soul searching, but just reflect and try and take out the positives of the day and use the positives going forward. And the negatives, you can never move forward if you're turning back all the time. So it's about learning from the now and then just moving forward. And that is basically how my day-to-day is run. I also try and make some time in the late afternoons, early evenings with my family. I also try and make time with my mates as well. I think that's also important, and I think it's quite healthy. So it because they keep me honest. You've got family, unedited, questioning you about anything and everything, and that's one safe haven. And similarly, then you've got some decent mates that would also, literally, depending on what the climate of the rugby industry is, just thrash it all out. And they keep you open and they keep you honest, and they tell you the stuff and they give you the stuff that you maybe don't pick up in an office environment. So that's also quite important.
What I like about the cold dips and being on your own, you mentioned that a few times now, is that I hear it a lot from leaders and people in leadership positions. And that's that the whole concept of solitude, creating a space to be on your own so that you can reflect, so that you can look back and take the time and be still. Because we're not going to know what to change and what to improve if we don't actually take a step back from our day to day and reflect and be self-aware and humble enough once again to admit where we can improve and what we can do more of. So I love that. Thank you for sharing your day-to-day routine use.
No, it's a pleasure. In that day-to-day, your viewers would have noticed that there was no reference to golf.
Is that week to week?
because yeah, I try and keep the golf for weekends, contrary to belief. But yes, that is my general Monday to Friday day to day. Over weekends, being in the rugby industry becomes quite difficult because, as much as I'm a rugby administrator, I'm a rugby fan, and I enjoy watching rugby. And where there's a good game or where there's matches on, I'll try and make the time and the effort to watch those games. But at the same time, over weekends is during those times that I try and I say yes to those golf invitations.
I see you've been saying yes to the SA20 invitations as well, because you've been on TV more than anyone else during the cricket. Oh, that's been great. That's been great. Yes, what's the biggest skill that you think many leaders overlook?
I think that's quite relative, because when we look at the skills that individual leaders look, it depends on that individual leader, him or herself, because my skill that I'm seeking is somebody that is maybe forthright or honest or straightforward. But somebody else might be looking in a skill in any particular person, somebody who's outgoing, who is an extrovert. So I think that it's quite diverse. It's a very good question, but ultimately, if and the question is posed at me, and I'm going to be giving you an answer. I think the first point is just to be honest. To be honest and to say, listen, that there's a saying that I always say, that if I've gone through 3 days and I've not achieved anything within the 3 days, then I've learned nothing, because in actual fact I've stagnated. So that's the kind of skills that I want in people. People always willing, with all humility, to kind of test themselves, to do that introspection within themselves. Not to accept that, listen, because if somebody's been doing the same thing for 20 years, is that classified as 20 years experience? It's 1 year of experience doing it for 20 years. So looking at somebody that is pushing that envelope, that is always willing to not be, and sorry for my Afrikaans words here, not being a ja boss kind of a person. Somebody that is saying, I'm willing to challenge you with all due respect and with all honesty and humility to make you better as a leader, but to also empower myself as part of your team.
That's great.
That's important, to me at least.
Definitely. You see, I want to end our conversation with 5 quick fire questions. So answer them. Don't think about them. I'm sure you're going to think back and be like, oh, I should have said something else. If not Saru, what would you be doing?
PGA.
Golfer.
Yes.
Off the field or off the course or on the course?
I'd love to be on the course.
On the course, okay.
Yes.
Caddy or player?
Player.
Who's your favorite golfer?
My favorite golfer, Tiger Woods.
Okay. Fair enough. Who's your role model?
My role model, I've got many role models. Professionally, my role model is our former CEO of SA Rugby, Yuri Roo. Being in the in the position during my second, third year that I was at SA Rugby, and learning so much from him from a professional perspective, from an industry perspective as well. You didn't ask for, or you said you don't want lengthy responses. So from a role model perspective, Yuri.
Great. Well done for keeping it to one sentence, because I know it's difficult. You want to branch out.
100%, yes.
That's good. We've got it. Yuri. Who or what has shaped who you are the most?
I think circumstance. Circumstance has shaped me for who I am at the moment. And I say this because I regard myself as a normal South African living in a third world country, trying to operate as if I'm in a first world. So circumstance will constantly shape me.
And I guess you need to embrace the circumstances, regardless of what they are.
100%.
If you could have dinner with any three people, living or dead, who would they be?
Living or dead? So one of the three people that I would most certainly would like to have dinner with, it latches on to my favorite golfers, Tiger Woods. Again, and my vested interest in the Tiger Woods dinner would purely be for just asking him to improve my golf. 100%. I'd really look at that. Some of the other personalities that I would want to have dinner with. One would be Barack Obama, former president of the United States of America, and again, one of the reasons for having an audience with him is purely in terms of him coming in and the history associated with the position, getting into the position, etc., to be able to pick his brain and see what life is like with him. And the third person that I would like to have dinner with, I'll come to the third person.
Okay, let's keep it to two.
Yeah, two is fine.
Let's keep it to two. That's great. You're the third person.
Spare thought for me having dinner with myself.
And then you see, we always end this podcast with a specific question. If you had a gigantic billboard that you could walk around with wherever you go, hypothetically speaking, of course, what message would be on that billboard and why?
This is probably going to be my shortest response. Be yourself.
Be yourself.
Yes.
I love that. Yusuf, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
I really appreciate your time. It's so lovely talking to you and getting to know you and the behind the scenes at SA Rugby. I'm really excited to see where you are and how far you've come in the past 15 years at SA Rugby. Thank you for your humility, your honesty, that you are always yourself, and that you make time for your friends and time to have fun. I appreciate it, and we will talk soon again.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. And yes, thank you. I do hope that some of the comments that was made, your listeners do find that of value. And if there's any comments that they find of no value, it goes in here and it goes out there. As I said, be yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, Yusuf.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.